February 14, 1943. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. The engine roars to life. Lieutenant Gordon Lyon Jr. grips the stick of his F4U Corsair. Around him, 11 other Marines do the same. Their mission: escort a formation of B-24 Liberators to Kahili. Strike the Japanese aerodrome. Come home alive. Lyon has never flown this aircraft in combat before. None of them have. The Corsair is controversial. Too dangerous for carriers. Too unforgiving for inexperienced pilots. The Navy rejected it. The Marines got it instead. A fighter so powerful it scared the men who flew it almost as much as it would terrify the enemy. Within minutes, 50 Japanese Zeros swarm them. The sky erupts. 2 Corsairs go down. 4 P-38s. 2 P-40s. 2 bombers. But in the chaos, something happens that changes everything. Lyon spots a Zero on his 6. He can't shake it. The Japanese pilot is skilled, aggressive, closing the distance. Lyon banks hard. The Zero follows. They spiral downward, locked in a deadly dance neither can escape. Then impact. Metal tears. Wings fold. 2 aircraft become one twisted mass of aluminum and fury, plummeting toward the jungle below. Both pilots die instantly. The Americans call it the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The Japanese call it something else, a warning. Because while Lyon's kill comes from collision rather than bullets, the Zero pilots in that battle notice something they've never encountered before. The Corsairs that escape don't just evade, they vanish. Accelerating beyond anything the Zeros can match. Climbing to altitudes where the lighter Japanese fighters gasp for air. The men in the Zeros watch their prey disappear into the clouds. And for the first time in the Pacific War, they feel something unfamiliar. Fear. The birth of a monster. 1938. The U.S. Navy issues a request that sounds impossible. Build us a carrier fighter that can hit 400 miles per hour. Make it climb fast. Give it range. Mount heavy guns. And make sure it can land on a carrier deck. In 1938, this is science fiction. Most fighters struggle to reach 300 miles per hour. Carrier landings are already dangerous enough without adding raw speed to the equation. The Navy is asking for a contradiction. A thoroughbred racehorse that can also perform ballet on a postage stamp. Chance Vought Aircraft takes the challenge. Rex Beisel leads the design team. He's brilliant but practical. He knows that speed comes from one thing: power. So he builds the aircraft around the largest engine available, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp. It produces 2,000 horsepower, more than any fighter engine in existence. But the engine creates a problem. To harness that power, the Corsair needs a massive propeller, 13 feet in diameter. The only way to give that propeller ground clearance without making the landing gear impossibly long is to bend the wing. Create an inverted gull shape that lifts the propeller higher while keeping the gear short. It's radical, unprecedented, beautiful in a brutal, mechanical way. The first prototype flies on May 29, 1940. Test pilot Lyman A. Bullard Jr. climbs to altitude over Connecticut. He pushes the throttle forward. The R2800 screams. The propeller becomes a blur. The Corsair accelerates beyond anything Bullard has ever experienced. When he lands, the engineers gather around. They're holding stopwatches and clipboards. Their calculations confirm what Bullard already knows. 405 miles per hour. The Corsair is the first American single-engine fighter to break 400 miles per hour. The Navy orders 584 aircraft immediately. But celebration doesn't last long. The Ensign Eliminator, July 1942. The first production Corsairs arrive for carrier trials. Navy pilots climb into the cockpit and immediately understand they have a problem. The nose stretches over 4 meters in front of them. During takeoff, when the tail is down and the nose points skyward, they can't see anything ahead. Landing is worse. The Corsair approaches the carrier deck at angles that feel suicidal. The pilot can't see the landing signal officer. He can't judge distance. The aircraft has a tendency to stall without warning at low speeds. When it does, the left wing drops suddenly, a characteristic that has killed test pilots already. The Navy pilots call it the inside eliminator. They reject it for carrier operations. This should be the end. Years of development. Millions of dollars. The fastest fighter in America, grounded because it can't land on a ship. But the Marines need fighters desperately. In the Solomon Islands, Marine Corps pilots are flying obsolete Grumman F4F Wildcats against the Japanese Zero. The Zero dominates every engagement. It's lighter, more maneuverable, faster in a turn. American pilots are dying. The Navy makes a decision. Send the Corsairs to land bases. Let the Marines figure it out. On February 12, 1943, 12 F4U Corsairs of Marine Fighting Squadron VMF-124 land at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal. Major William E. Guise commands them. His pilots have an average of 25 flight hours in the Corsair. 25 hours. To master an aircraft that Navy test pilots, with thousands of hours of experience, call a widowmaker. The Japanese have no idea what's coming. The sound of death. The first encounters are chaotic. Marine pilots discover quickly that the Corsair demands respect. It's powerful but unforgiving. Stall it at the wrong moment and it will kill you. Push it too hard in a turn and the left wing drops like a stone. The long nose obscures everything during takeoff and landing. Visibility in a dogfight is terrible. But when they master it, when they learn to use altitude and speed instead of trying to turn with the Zeros, everything changes. First Lieutenant Kenneth A. Walsh figures it out before most. He's a former enlisted pilot, scrappy and analytical. After his early encounters, he writes a report that becomes doctrine. I learned quickly that altitude was paramount. Whoever had altitude dictated the terms of the battle, and there was nothing a Zero pilot could do to change that. We had him. Walsh identifies the key insight. The Corsair doesn't fight like other American fighters. It doesn't try to match the Zero's maneuverability. Instead, it uses physics as a weapon. The Corsair can dive from 30,000 feet with the throttle wide open. It accelerates to speeds that would tear a Zero apart. When a Zero pilot tries to follow, his aircraft shudders and threatens to disintegrate. He has to pull back, watch the Corsair disappear. The Corsair can also climb faster than anything in the Japanese arsenal. When a Zero gets on a Corsair's tail, the American pilot doesn't turn. He points the nose up and climbs. The Zero, lighter but less powerful, can't follow. It loses airspeed, stalls, falls away. And there's something else. When the Corsair dives, the air rushing through the engine cooling vents creates a high-pitched shriek. It's distinctive, terrifying, unmistakable. Japanese soldiers hear it during ground attacks. Japanese pilots hear it in their headsets. The sound means death is coming fast, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. They give it a name, Whistling Death. The Black Sheep. By August 1943, 26 Navy and Marine squadrons fly Corsairs. The aircraft has almost completely replaced the F4F Wildcat in Marine service. Kill ratios start climbing. The Zero is no longer invincible. Then Major Gregory, Pappy, Boyington arrives. Boyington is 30 years old, ancient by fighter pilot standards. He's already flown combat missions in China with the Flying Tigers. He's skilled, aggressive, and has zero patience for military bureaucracy. The Marines give him command of VMF 214, a squadron so mismatched and unorthodox that Boyington calls them his Black Sheep. They deploy to the Russell Islands in September 1943. Boyington's tactics are simple: find Japanese aircraft, shoot them down. Repeat. His favorite hunting ground is Bougainville, where the Japanese maintain a major airfield at Kahili. Boyington leads his squadron in circles above the base, daring the Japanese to scramble. When they do, it's a massacre. October 17, 1943. Boyington leads 24 Corsairs over Kahili. An estimated 60 Japanese fighters scramble to meet them. The battle lasts less than an hour. 20 Japanese aircraft go down. Not a single Corsair is lost. The math is brutal. The Zeros still maneuver better at low altitude. But it doesn't matter. The Corsair pilots refuse to fight at low altitude. They maintain speed and height. They boom and zoom. They use their 6.50 caliber machine guns to shred aircraft that can't take punishment the way American planes can. Boyington himself scores 28 confirmed kills before being shot down in January 1944. He survives, spending the rest of the war in a Japanese POW camp. His Black Sheep squadron flies just 87 days of combat. In that time, they shoot down or damage 203 Japanese aircraft. The numbers speak for themselves. But there's something more important happening. Something the Japanese high command sees clearly but can't fix. The tide is turning. What the enemy saw. Saburo Sakai survives the war. He's one of Japan's most successful fighter pilots, credited with at least 28 confirmed kills, possibly more than 60 depending on which records you trust. He flies from China to the Solomon Islands. He survives a catastrophic head wound that blinds him in one eye. He witnesses the entire arc of the Pacific War from the cockpit of a Zero. Decades later, he writes about it. In his autobiography Samurai, Sakai acknowledges something remarkable. The Corsair is the aircraft Japanese pilots fear most. More than the P-38 Lightning. More than the P-51 Mustang, which doesn't even reach the Pacific in significant numbers until late in the war. More than the F-6F Hellcat, which is easier to fly but slightly slower. The Corsair. Sakai explains why. The Corsair was the better interceptor and dogfighter. He admits this without shame or excuse. It's simply true. By late 1943, when Japanese pilots encounter Corsairs, they know they're facing aircraft that can outrun them, outline them, outdive them, and absorb damage that would obliterate a Zero. The Japanese response reveals desperation. They don't develop a new fighter to counter the Corsair. Instead, they stick with the Zero, an aircraft designed in the late 1930s, now hopelessly outmatched. They rotate pilots back home to become instructors less often than the Americans do, leading to steady erosion of skill and experience. They lack fuel for training. They lack resources for development. By 1944, the Japanese are putting pilots into cockpits with 20 hours of flight time. Sakai later observes that this is as much a death sentence as ordering them to become kamikaze pilots. The result is the same. American pilots, by contrast, cycle home after completing their tours. They become instructors. They train the next generation. The quality of American pilots improves throughout the war, while Japanese skill deteriorates. The Corsair amplifies this advantage. An average American pilot in a Corsair can outperform an experienced Japanese pilot in a zero simply by using the aircraft's superior speed and climb rate. The Corsair makes tactics easier. It forgives mistakes that would be fatal in other aircraft. It rewards aggression. The kill ratio tells the story, 11-1. For every Corsair lost in air-to-air combat, 11 Japanese aircraft go down. The Angels of Okinawa, April 1945. The invasion of Okinawa represents the final major battle before the planned invasion of Japan. The Japanese defend with everything they have left. Kamikaze attacks intensify. Suicide pilots throw themselves at American ships in waves. The losses are catastrophic on both sides. Corsairs fly from land bases and, finally, from carrier decks. The Royal Navy figured out how to land Corsairs on carriers years earlier, using a curved approach that gives pilots better visibility. The U.S. Navy finally adopts similar techniques in late 1944. By Okinawa, Marine squadrons operate from carriers like USS Essex, launching strikes against Japanese airfields and intercepting kamikaze attacks. The Marines on the ground, fighting through some of the bloodiest combat of the Pacific War, look up when they hear the distinctive shriek. They watch Corsairs dive on Japanese positions with bombs, rockets, and napalm. They watch Corsairs intercept kamikaze aircraft before they can reach the fleet. They give the Corsair a new nickname, Angels of Okinawa. The aircraft that was too dangerous for carrier operations in 1942 becomes the most versatile fighter bomber in the Pacific. It drops over 15,621 tons of bombs during the war, 70% of all bombs dropped by U.S. fighters. It flies from jungle airstrips and carrier decks. It intercepts high-altitude bombers and strafes ground targets at treetop level. By August 1945, when Japan surrenders, Corsair pilots have flown 64,051 combat sorties. They've claimed 2,140 air combat victories. They've lost 189 aircraft in air-to-air combat. The kill ratio, 11.3-1. No other fighter in the Pacific War achieves anything close. The legend continues. The Corsair doesn't retire after World War II. When war breaks out in Korea in 1950, the Corsair returns to combat. By now, jet aircraft dominate the skies. The MiG-15 on the communist side, the F-86 Sabre on the American side. The Corsair, a piston engine design from the 1930s, seems hopelessly obsolete. But on September 10, 1952, something impossible happens. Marine Captain Jesse Fulmer is flying combat air patrol in his F4U near the Korean coast when his radar picks up enemy aircraft. He's vectored toward them. What he finds staggers him. A formation of MiG-15 jets, among the most advanced fighters in the world, capable of speeds exceeding 650 miles per hour. Fulmer attacks. What happens next is debated in aviation circles to this day. The details are fuzzy. What's certain is that Fulmer's Corsair shoots down a MiG-15 in air-to-air combat, the first confirmed kill of a jet by a piston-engine fighter in history. The Corsair fights on. French Navy Corsairs fly in Indochina and Algeria. The Honduran Air Force operates them until 1979, making the Corsair one of the last piston-engine fighters in frontline service anywhere in the world. The final air-to-air kill scored by any World War II-era piston fighter happens in 1969, during the brief football war between Honduras and El Salvador, when a Honduran Corsair shoots down a P-51 Mustang. The aircraft rejected by the U.S. Navy in 1942 becomes the longest-serving fighter of the propeller age. The Reckoning. Return to that moment over Guadalcanal. February 14, 1943. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre. 2 Corsairs lost. Lieutenant Gordon Lyon Jr. dead in a collision. The mission called a disaster. But look closer. The surviving Corsair pilots returned to Henderson Field and filed their reports. They describe what happened, the speeds they achieved, the altitude advantages, the firepower, the durability. Major Guys listens to his pilots and understands something critical. They lost the battle but discovered the winning strategy. Don't turn with a zero. Don't try to outmaneuver it. Use speed. Use altitude. Use the physics that the Corsair was built to exploit. Fight the enemy on your terms, not theirs. Within weeks, the doctrine spreads. The kill ratios shift. By May, Kenneth Walsh becomes the first Corsair ace with 5 confirmed kills. By August, the Corsair is replacing the Wildcat across the Marine Corps. By year's end, Japanese pilots hear the distinctive whistle and know they're fighting for survival. The transformation takes less than a year. A fighter too dangerous for carriers becomes the most successful American aircraft in the Pacific. A design rejected by the Navy saves Marine pilots' lives and breaks Japanese air superiority. An aircraft nicknamed the Inside Eliminator earns a new name from its enemies, Whistling Death. Saburo Sakai, decades after the war, in interviews and memoirs, admits what many Japanese pilots knew but rarely said aloud. The Corsair changed everything. When American pilots mastered it, when they understood how to exploit its advantages, the outcome of the air war became inevitable. The Zero remained agile, beautiful, deadly at low speeds and low altitudes. But by 1943, the war wasn't being fought at low speeds and low altitudes anymore. It was being fought in the vertical, in climbs and dives where power and speed mattered more than maneuverability. It was being fought by pilots who rotated home to train others, creating a pyramid of improving skill. It was being fought with aircraft that could absorb damage, carry heavy bomb loads, fly for hours over open ocean, and return to land on carrier decks or jungle airstrips. The Corsair wasn't just a fighter. It was a system, a weapon that combined American industrial capacity, tactical innovation, and a willingness to learn from early failures. The Japanese built the Zero and stopped. The Americans built the Corsair and kept iterating, producing over 12,500 aircraft in multiple variants, each one better than the last. The bent-wing fighter, with a massive engine and the haunting whistle, became a legend for a reason. Because when Japanese pilots saw those distinctive gull wings in their mirrors, when they heard that shriek cutting through the sky, they knew they were facing something they couldn't outrun. Something they couldn't outfight. Something that represented not just a superior aircraft, but a superior system, better training, better tactics, better logistics, better everything. The Americans called it the F4U Corsair. The Marines called it the Angel of Okinawa. The Japanese called it Whistling Death. History calls it one of the greatest fighters ever built. And on February 14, 1943, when Lieutenant Gordon Lyon Jr. collided with that Zero over the Solomon Islands, neither pilot could have known they were fighting in the first chapter of a story that would reshape the entire Pacific War. The Corsair arrived imperfect, dangerous, controversial. It left as a legend.